Hey everybody, thank you for joining us today.
Just testing the microphone.
Yeah, we're just having a good time. We're playing a little bit of musical chairs here. We're just going to continually hop around per episode and see where we like to sit. No, really, we heard what you said that you don't want to see Philip and I, so we put our guest in the main camera. But then we moved the camera, so now we're still the forefront and the focus of everything that's going on there. But they do have the better microphone, so you guys will come in crisp and clear. So you should recognize them. They've been here a time or two. We have Jonathan and Chelsea back with us today. So thank you guys for being here.
Well,
Thank
you
you.
for having us.
I was about to say, please say something.
No, 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 you don't have to worry about that.
We have their mics muted.
Yeah, yeah. I'll start ventriloquism.
They're here for appearance only. So last time we were here, we kind of covered the second half of a heavenly marriage battle. I guess that's the way we can put that. Because we'd heard your half, we wanted to hear your half of the situation and kind of see how you guys have worked through that and continue to work through that together. So, kind of, what are we hoping for today? I know we usually have our testimony from the guest, and we realize we haven't got your testimony yet either.
You have not.
So we'll kind of
It'll happen.
we'll kind of let you guys start off with whatever you want to talk about, and kind of roll from there with it. I think you had something you wanted to jump off with.
Well, I was just today. I don't know. We had a Bible study last Saturday night, and I feel like for the last week that I've been kind of under attack, and just wanted to be, I was to the point in this week where I was just like, this is gonna fall apart. Everything's gonna fall apart around me. I'm done. I can't do this forever. God can't keep this going. That's kind of how my mind was working. It was complete opposite direction of my normal mentality, my all I do is win mentality.
Yes.
And I was not ready for that at all. And and really, even up to this morning, whenever I woke up this morning, I had felt better. But even this morning when I woke up, Austin texted this morning about just kind of something he just didn't know what it was, kind of a pit in the stomach kind of deal, and I was like, I don't even remember what I texted you anymore because I'm so separated from that mindset now. But I texted him something back, and I'm going to read it because it'd be easier. That's just easier.
Well,
Than,
we have the technology.
we do.
Us.
It can be done
We
with the
have
technology we have. So let's see here. Man, we've texted a lot today already.
Yeah, right in the middle of my Sunday school.
Yeah, that's the best time to text.
I texted you back. I said,
FYI.
"Hey guys."
Well, you guys were
Hey,
talking
guys.
while we were taking our pictures too, so you guys
Yeah.
got me back for that.
You said you're feeling a pull this morning. You don't know what's going on. I
Yeah.
said it's like you took the words out of my brain. Is what I said. I feel very discomfort is what I felt. I felt a discomfort this morning, and then I got to church, and I still kind of had that discomfort a little bit. And honest to God, the music started playing, and that discomfort started disappearing a little bit. And when I got up to preach, I always pray before I preach. And one of the things that I asked God to do is to put a hedge about the church. And I've never prayed this before, but I said, any demons that are already in here, get them out. And it was gone. And it's insane, and not insane. Like God did what I asked him to do. It's not insane, but it's insane sometimes to think of that way. I told Phil,
Sure.
I'm terrified because God has been answering my prayers. Isn't that a weird thing to be terrified about? And it's pretty awesome, but scary.
Absolutely.
Well, so the feeling that I was having, I don't think it was in the similar relation of that. Mine wasn't a feeling of a dread kind of thing. It was there's some task or something for me to do. I just didn't know what it was at the time. But the discomfort was accurate, and I think what it made sense to me whenever you said that, because God kind of puts us out of our comfort place to get us where He wants us to be. Because if we're comfortable, we're not going to move.
Hey, that's a good tie-in to my wife
yes.
being here. Very uncomfortable.
God is the God of segues. He gets us
Yes,
where we need to go.
Exactly. This today even I was going to cancel. Not cancel. I was going to postpone because my mom is in town. My aunt just passed away, and my mom and sister's in town. My mom's from West Virginia. My sister's from California. She's getting ready to move to Florida, Jacksonville, Florida. So I'm excited about that because she'll be less than 8 hours away rather than 5 days away.
Yeah.
And they said, "Do you want to come to California to move?" So I said, "No." I don't want anything to do with that state personally. I just,
So if she hadn't said anything about California, I would have not known because she seemed completely normal.
well, that's because she was raised normal. She was raised normal.
So she's not from California.
No.
She moved to California.
She's in California currently.
If we did have anybody from California watching the podcast, we don't anymore.
Hey, if you're from California watching this podcast, you know. You know.
I was about to say, it's
And
also
welcome to Tennessee.
it's also very difficult for me not to say California in the Arnold Schwarzenegger voice, but that's getting off topic.
Yeah, there you go.
So talking about some discomfort. So
Yeah.
I'm comfortable
Yeah.
most of the time here.
Yes.
And I think you're getting more comfortable with talking on the microphone.
It's not the talking on the microphone. I'm a big talker. It is the weight of the situation. It's every time I teach. I know every time you guys preach. It's the weight of sharing the work of the Holy Spirit in our lives with the world,
Yeah.
and making sure in my own self that I'm doing what God wants me to do. That's the weight that I.
The fear of taking it light.
The motorcycle
Yeah.
mentality has to be. The motorcycle mentality. I've told you about it.
You have, but I've forgotten.
So, you ever ridden a motorcycle?
I have.
So, whenever you operate a motorcycle, you need to have a healthy dose of fear because if you don't, you're going to die. If you're not a little bit afraid, you're going to go off the side of the road. You're going to go too tightly. You're going to do something with your bike. If you have a little bit of fear, then you're going to stay within that boundaries. So handling with God, you have to have that little bit of fear that you don't fly off the handle and start speaking what you want to speak.
It's a weird thing preaching. I am so anxious to preach. Until I get up there, I'm terrified. Until God takes over, then I'm good.
Yes, yeah, same thing. Same thing with teaching.
I mean, I'm so anxious. It's like, man, I cannot wait to teach. And it's like, you know,
And you feel like you're not prepared.
like
and-
and like when I get up there and it's like, you know, and then it just and then God takes over. When God takes
Absolutely.
over, then
You're good to go.
I forget what I'm
Yeah.
doing anymore. It's just like I'm just on autopilot.
It's
at
an
that point.
amazing feeling.
Yeah. And so, but this morning, Chelsea got to speak to a young man about salvation and talk to him about the salvation. He went out to his dad, Nate, and he got saved. So it's pretty
Amen.
amazing.
Awesome.
So,
Yeah.
and speaking of Nate, Justin, Tyson, and Jeremiah, this shirt, this very bright shirt is for you, completely, because I'm bright up here, but not bright anywhere else. You know, I don't like to wear anything bright. You know, I
I
don't.
don't really like to talk about people. but-
Yeah. Oh, well, they don't know who they are. Nobody knows. So.
No, but I mean I didn't want to tell you.
That's
about-
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. Yeah, it is what it is.
So speaking of Chelsea, you've been awfully quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chelsea, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Yeah.
So I guess how did that conversation go about? How'd that get started?
With the little boy today?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So previously this week we had two other kids that talked to their parents about salvation after our Sunday school lesson last week. And John got the privilege of talking to them at the coffee shop. And so this week I wanted to come back in and clarify a little bit more. We had talked about sin and idolatry, and we talked about a bunch of things last week. And just like how idolatry in today's world pertains to kids. What do they put above God? Trying to get it on their level where I'm not speaking over their head. They really see the point, you know, and so they all admitted, you know, video games, electronics, you know. So this week, because of the other two kids talking about salvation with their parents, I thought I really need to talk about salvation. It's dear to my heart, and I'm convicted that I haven't been sharing it as clearly as I could be in each lesson. And so I thought, Easter's coming up, and Easter is when I got saved personally. So today in my mind, before I got there, I was like, we're just going to talk about salvation. I'm going to share my testimony with the kids. And so at the end of class, I asked each one, I said, how many of you have made a profession of faith? How many of you know what that means? And I had a couple kids raise their hand, and that one boy, he just looked up at me and goes, I want to know now. And I was like, okay, let's do this.
Awesome.
Yeah, so all the kids prayed with him in the back. And then, of course, after we were done, he went out with his dad, and he got to pray with his dad. So
Awesome.
He prayed with his dad. It's his dad's story, but he said, I just want to walk with Jesus. I just want to walk with Jesus. And it's just, what a cool.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful that God didn't make it about this magical prayer words,
No.
all these magical
Yes.
things, and say it in this way. And even my IFB side at times, sometimes I get carried away with that. You know, with that.
Oh, absolutely.
Whenever you hear somebody, you know, because I let Stephen, you know, I said, why don't you do it? You know, but then
Yes.
my IFB is like, well, you didn't say, you know, this. And it's
Yeah.
not about what you say, and I
Absolutely.
preach that, but at the same
Yes.
time, it's still it
was in your head,
It's
yeah.
drilled in my head, man.
Yeah.
It's just like. Anyway, so I'm so thankful that I mean, because when I got saved, I said, God, I'm sorry. And that was literally probably the only words that were understandable that would come out of my mouth. You know, everything else was just like, you know, sobbing and weeping. And so I mean, my salvation wasn't, oh, Heavenly Father, you know, and so whatever. So I'm thankful that God uses our heart cry
Absolutely.
as our salvation, not necessarily our mouth cry. So anyway, so speaking of heart cries, Chelsea, why don't you tell us, obviously I know, but they would like to know about your journey to Christ.
Oh man, the chair really.
Sorry about that, editor.
Yeah. Sorry, Savannah. My chair is really popping.
I guess I wasn't raised in a Christian home. I didn't go to church as a child, so I didn't. I remember knowing there's a God. I don't know where that knowing came from outside of, you know, He put that in my heart. And I know I have family now. I know this. I have family that went to church, so maybe they talked about God and I overheard it. I don't know, but there was never really a clear presentation of who God was or anything growing up. My mom and my dad were married. I grew up in Illinois. We moved to Tennessee when I was 9. My mom wanted to move away. She was actually getting into Wiccan, and so they moved to get away from some family drama, and that kind of gave her the liberty to do what she wanted, because like I said, I didn't realize then that some of my family were Christians or, you know, religious, go to church. So that gave her the liberty to pull out, and I got to witness some things through that weren't so great. I know she never really wanted to be involved with anything bad necessarily, but she kind of got in a group that was, you know, sacrificing things, and it came to the point where they sacrificed her friend and my friend to their God, and so that was something that we went through. I know, I don't know. As a child growing up, I was always looking for something. Like I said, I had God, and that was kind of like pushed out because where my mom was headed. And I kind of got wrapped up in what she was doing. You know, as a kid, you look up to your parents. You want to do. So I had a Teen Witch book that I looked at, and we did the Ouija board. We did all that stuff, and there's some pretty satanic things that happen through that. Very real. Those bad spirits are very real to me.
That's what I was
and
going
I
to
know
say.
to some
That's
people
real.
they think that's crazy, but I have experienced that, and it is real. So even watching scary movies, I don't even like scary movies because it's real to me. I don't know. I feel like it just invited the presence of evil into our home as a child.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know after we moved, things between my parents got really bad. My dad kind of hit a depression, and he was diagnosed bipolar schizophrenic, and he kind of went off the deep end for a while. My mom also was going through like a depression, and she kind of pulled out of the Wiccan stuff after that. She still believed in the Indian stuff and dabbled in the spirit stuff, but she had pulled out from that group because that wasn't what she was looking for. And so I don't even know how these people came into our life, but somehow they ended up in our life and they weren't leaving anytime soon. So there was a group of people who came to our house, and like I said, my parents were both kind of depressed, and they brought alcohol, drugs into the picture. And so my house kind of became a drug home after that. Took us in a whole different downward spiral. My parents' marriage wasn't good because of my dad's condition, because of this group of people that was in there. I remember I started drinking at a really young age just because That was what was in the house that was available. It was okay for me to do that. My parents didn't stand against it at that point. This is hard for me to talk about. I don't want to hurt my mom or my dad.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of morals in my house. I dressed really bad. I didn't realize, now looking at girls walking the streets and how they dress, I see how you invite the presence of men into your life. But I wasn't really seeking anything. I remember being on the front porch one night, and this older guy had already been drinking before he pulled in, and I don't know if he was on anything else or not, but he just said, he came to the house at the right time, and I was just waiting for him. And I said, no, I'm not. But he had pulled me aside, and he raped me that night outside. And I remember coming in, and my mom was at the table, and there was a bunch of people there. And of course I was ripped. My clothes were ripped. And she just looked at me, and she's like, you got what you deserved. And she doesn't remember saying that. We've talked about this because I had a lot of bitterness and anger towards her over that, but she doesn't even remember. After that, shortly after that, I found out I was pregnant. I was only 14. And so, the decision was to get an abortion. Nobody wanted to help raise it. I was too young to be a mom.
Sure.
And then after going through that, I didn't even really understand what I was doing. I was young. Yeah. I just knew that that's what everybody was saying I had to do, so that's what I did. And I remember going through a really deep depression after that. I was cutting myself. I had an eating disorder. I overdosed on pills. I just became an alcoholic at that point. I was doing drugs. I just lost. I would give myself to men because I had nothing left. I felt like I had nothing left. So that was how I spent most of my younger years, going through school. And I've talked to a few people from school recently, and they had no idea. Mm-hmm. But in my mind, I fled from people because I'm like, they just know. They know I'm a bad person. They nobody likes me. I'm worthless. And so, I just pulled to myself and continued in that depression. I knew I was a mess. I knew I was an alcoholic. I knew my life was headed down a really bad path. I had good grades in school. I had somebody told me I'd never do anything with my life. I was a waste of talent. And that was one of my teachers. And so I had enough credits to graduate early, so I dropped out early. And I still graduated with my class, but 2 days after, I joined the military. I went into the Air Force because I thought, I've got to get my life together. I'm just a mess. I got to get away from these people. I've got to get out. And so I went to the Air Force, and I was there for about 4 weeks, and they pulled me aside out of basic training. I knew I ran all the time, but for some reason I was throwing up all the time. I had no idea. And so they pulled me aside and said my lab work was bad. Something came up in my lab work, so they kept pulling me aside to do more blood work. And eventually they pulled me aside and said, you're pregnant. Well, I was told after the abortion I could never have any children because the scar tissue had left. And so I was like, I can't be pregnant. And they were like, well, we've done several tests. You're pregnant. And so my first time going to church was on the Air Force Base because that was where I was allowed to cry. So I went to church, and I was like, now what? Mm-hmm. Sorry.
No, you're fine, sis.
I'm thankful, though. I wouldn't change anything because that is what got me to church that day. And I knew I'd already gone in there because I knew I was a mess. But now, man, I really got to clean my life up. If I'm going to be a mom, I got to clean up. And so I came back home, and I thought the right thing to do is to get married. I was only 17. So we got married. I think he kind of wrote me off when I left for the military because I don't think he expected me to come back. But anyway, we got married. It wasn't much of a marriage. We had our separate bedrooms, separate bank accounts. We were young. I wanted to clean up my life, and he really didn't want any part of that. I changed my jobs. There was a girl who I went to school with, and she was the first person to mention Jesus' name to me. But I wasn't very nice in school, and I was like the person who ripped up your Bible, or I was pretty rough. She never stopped. She kept trying to pursue that. And so when she knew I came home and I was having a baby, she got her church together and threw me a baby shower. Her parents own their own cleaning business. They offered me a job, and they helped me, kind of get my feet in the right direction when I got back home. Little did I know that's where he also went to church. And later, we met through the cleaning company. But as I worked there for a couple years, well, not even a couple years. I worked there for about a year, I guess. But Lucas's dad he was abusive. We would get in really bad fights all the time. And I tried to get him to come to church with me. I tried to get the pastor to come out and talk to him. We tried to do counseling, and nothing stuck. Nothing worked. And so I just finally decided I was going to leave, and I was going to move in with my mom. She also worked at the cleaning company. And so I filed for divorce and left, and he ended up coming to work for the cleaning company. And I remember him coming up and talking to me and saying, hey, we should go out sometime. And I still had my wedding ring on. I was like, I'm happily married. I have a kid. Leave me alone. I guess he could see through it. I don't know. I don't know his side. I don't know. But anyway, he continued to pursue. He later found out that, I was going through the divorce. Lucas, I can't remember what happened. He stopped breathing. He turned blue one night, and I had to rush him to the emergency room. And I remember I called his dad, and he said, I'm hunting. Let me know if he makes it.
Wow.
And I was just like, I don't even know at this point. Like, how can you be a dad and just not care?
Yeah.
And that was definitely like a final straw. I can't keep doing this. But I remember he was there. And he's like, you don't even know who I am. And he cares, And eventually, my mom was selling a pool table. He came to her house to check the pool table out. But when he got there,
he was checking you out.
When he got there, though, he walked in, and I'm still underage at this point, and I'm drinking. My son's in bed. He came in, though, and he said, where's your son at? I said, he's in bed. And he's like, what are you doing? What I always do, I had let my guard back down. I'm going through this divorce. I'm depressed, and I've let alcohol come back in. I'd started smoking again. And he was like, if you don't put that down, I will call DCS tomorrow and have your child taken away. This isn't happening. And I set it down, and I haven't drank since. But I thought, you're right. This is not what I wanted. This is what I did not want to come back to. And I realized that he actually cared. He cared about my son. He cared about me. And it started a relationship between us, a friendship. He started helping me read my Bible. And I guess going back to the baby shower that my friend threw for me, they somewhat witnessed to me about salvation at the baby shower. And I remember them praying over me. And I remember thinking, if this is real, I want it. But it took me years to realize I said, if this is real. I didn't have faith. It just sounded really good. That's what I want. But after being with him, and he showed me out of the Bible things, he worked with me. He didn't understand. I didn't know John 3:16. I didn't know Jonah and the whale. I didn't know Noah's Ark. None of that. I knew nothing. So he had to start out really basic childish stuff with me. But he was very patient, very kind. It wasn't until he was the youth pastor. We were married. He was the youth pastor. We were going to have Isaac in 2011, Easter, that I finally got saved. But I sat under him. I listened to him. And finally, God convicted my heart. I said, if. I had no faith. And then at this point, I fully understood what salvation meant. And I knew for a fact I needed that. It's not that I just wanted it. Mm-hmm. If it's real, it was I needed to have him in my life. That was a big turning point for me, for us. And you guys were talking about teaching, how you get nervous teaching. I started teaching at a Christian preschool after we got married. And I started out with 2-year-olds, teaching Bible to 2-year-olds. And I remember, like, I just wanted to throw up every day before I talked to 2-year-olds. I was so nervous. And I thought, they're going to know I don't know what I'm talking about. And so I really did learn a lot of basic Bible stories by just teaching little 2-year-olds, toddlers. Yes. And I'm like, this is so cool. And they're not getting what I'm getting. But, man, this is good stuff. And as time has gone on, I really do enjoy teaching. I still teach at Mount Pisgah preschool right now, and I teach at our children at the church, and I can teach older kids now. I've been promoted. But that's a little bit about our salvation story. I mean, after that, we've had our ups and downs in our marriage, and we've talked a little bit about that. But that's kind of it. If God can save me, man, you know. And he still uses me. I guess that's what hurt. It hurts. I'm thankful he uses me, but when I get down, I still struggle with depression and anxiety really bad. Yeah. But when I get down in that pit, I'm just like, I am so worthless. Why do you want me? Why? Mm-hmm. And I struggle with that a lot. But even this morning, he still used me today.
Yes.
I'm thankful for that.
So several things.
I knew Austin was going to talk next.
So first off, I don't care how you were dressed. I don't care how anybody is dressed. I don't care if a woman is butt naked with a sign. Rape is inexcusable on anybody's part.
Absolutely.
So please,
10,000.
I assume you're fine now, but don't ever think that was your fault. And for anybody out there,
yeah.
I don't care how they're dressed. I don't care what situation they're in. Inebriated, high, passed out. Rape is inexcusable. Mm-hmm. So that's one. Second thing, I'm guilty myself of assuming that Wiccanism is a joke, in that it's a bunch of edgy high school kids that listen to Black Sabbath and say, "Oh, Satan rules." That's enlightening for me to know that is. There's more to it than that.
There's a lot more to it.
So we may have further discussions at a different time about the furtherance of that. But that's incredible to me. I always try and see similarities, because I know a pretty good amount of you in seeing that. And so we do have a bit different, but we do have a bit on that. But I must say, first off, that you may be one of, if not the bravest people we've had on here, because twice now, you have been more vulnerable than I've seen anybody in my life. So thank you for that. That's a huge metric of showing Christ in you, because that takes a lot more bravery than I have.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that. I'm so pleased to hear that. Such a great testimony, because you've had such a rough go. And to see you now, to know you now, that's such a great, my God's done this. He's found so much from this situation to use you for. That's incredible. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
And I think something else that goes with my testimony, this last year, 2020, January 2020, my mom herself got saved, and she said she's watched me for 12 years, and she said, it's real. Yeah. What you have is something real, and she wanted it. So my mom even was converted through watching just the difference, because at first she thought it was him changing me.
Yeah, sure.
Why don't change for a boy? Don't do that, But she said she really sees a difference, and that's what led her to her salvation also.
That's the practicality of the testimony of it was your life that showed that. That's awesome.
That's how God wants it to work.
Yeah. There was more, but those were the big ones I had to hit on to get out there.
Well, the one thing that I didn't say anything the whole time, you know, but the one thing that she hit me with back in the day, and this is something I think all preachers can listen to. I would preach, and we make statements like, "You know the story,"
Yeah.
and "You know the verse," and she was the first person to ever say, "I don't know."
Yeah.
Right.
When you say that, you're making me feel like an idiot because I don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And that has completely changed my thinking when I'm giving the word, because not everybody knows.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
Well, when you were saying you had to kind of learn the stories as you taught those kids, when I was the youth Sunday school teacher here before I became minister, that was me. I knew the idea, but I actually had to sit down and study this before I taught it to the kids, and that, I mean, it helped me out
Yeah.
to find out what I was really liking in that. But I, you know, that's one thing that we do take that for granted.
Yeah.
It's super easy to say, oh, you remember about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Let's talk about the furnace. Well, no, we didn't know who these people are, how they got up to that. If you've never heard those
Exactly.
names, you can't even pronounce those names.
Yeah.
Which is not even their Hebrew name.
And
Yeah.
I still struggle
I was thinking the
with.
same thing.
I'll be this Easter will be 10 years for me being saved, and I don't have a lot of confidence in Bible knowledge whatsoever. I
I think that's a good way to think, though, because as soon as you get confident, that's whenever the God goes away, and it's you.
Yeah.
So one more thing that you talked about, I'm just going to keep talking.
Keep going.
You said that you still do struggle with various things that you're going with. I want to say, like, kind of welcome to the group, because that is a thing, and I can tell. Again, we have the empathy because I've not been in your exact situation, but the mental struggles I definitely do get. And I've found that obviously the closer I get to God, the better I can handle those situations, the fewer and far between they are, but they do keep coming back. I take that as kind of my thorn in the flesh situation of it's something, it's a scar from my previous sin, partly. But part of it, I think, is to show me that, hey, you know, this isn't you. You're not doing good. I'm doing good for you. To kind of keep you grounded in that. I don't know if that's how you look at it. I don't know if that's how you look at
I
it.
know.
But
I
that's,
feel like I get attacked. The more I want to do for God, the more I feel attacked,
Absolutely.
and the depression comes on me. Like, you're worthless. You shouldn't be doing that. God could use somebody better than you. And that's when I feel
Preach,
the most
sister,
attacked.
preach.
Every time I try to do something good, that's when I'm
Yeah.
the most attacked.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I,
That's normal.
I wish that the mentality that we can have here talking about it with the understanding, if we could just remember that and recall that in those moments. But it doesn't work that way. We know that. We know
But that Satan works that way.
he does. And, you know, it sounds like you've had your a couple rounds with some demonic forces. So, again, congratulations on coming through the other side of that.
Well, but just think of this. So we think about people that don't know God,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? So how many people that know God don't know Satan?
It's true.
I was thinking about that when you were
Yeah.
speaking.
I never
You know
really heard
both
about
now.
Satan.
But you
Growing
know,
up either,
but you
yeah.
know both,
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Not
that's true.
not you've heard of.
But I've seen
You've
the presence. Yeah.
We may know one side, or some of us have seen both. But people that have seen both, I think, have a totally different perspective.
I almost hazard to say that my knowledge of Satan strengthens my faith in God.
Absolutely.
Because if there is something that is so evil, there has to be something
So much better.
so much better on the opposition of that. And so, you know, you may not have known Lucifer or Satan by name, but definitely the stuff you were involved with was his handiwork all through it under a different guise.
Yeah.
Those who know him have less tolerance for him.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I was thinking when I was a young teenager, maybe 12 or so, I seen a demon cast out. Real, like you're talking about. This was real. I heard it. I smelt it. I could smell. It was like I was outside in a yard, and it was like I was all of a sudden in a slaughterhouse. Fresh smell of blood, that irony smell from blood, just like filled the yard. And then it took off screaming and ran down the street. Now, I couldn't see it visually with my eyes, but I could hear it getting farther away, and the voice screaming getting farther away, and the smell of that blood. And then the person completely changed. I mean, just absolutely completely changed. Those kind of things, like you say, it's not God you're seeing, but it strengthens you in your faith, because you know that it's just another thing to show you of how real this word is, how real God is. It's a real thing. It's not, I mean, we're not playing.
Exactly.
I wouldn't wish.
You don't want to see that.
I don't want anybody to see that. But if it builds the faith, then I want them to experience it.
I understand what you're saying. You're like, I don't want to see that, but your mind wanders to get in your brain to actually witness it with your eyes rather than, you know.
It's part of that, but if you've got somebody that, you know, is proclaiming atheism or agnosticism or whatever, and there's no spiritual world, you die and that's it, and then they see something like that, or they feel, because it is definitely something you can feel.
That was what got me when we played the Ouija board one night. There was a spirit we were talking to, and he didn't say what happened to him until after, but he made me feel the pain of, I felt like my whole body was on fire. I felt paralyzed. I couldn't move. I was in pain. I ended up on the floor. And then later he said that he had died in a car wreck that had caught on fire. And in my mind at that point, I was like, I want nothing to do with this.
To give you a name?
No, I don't remember that. But it was really, it was really disturbing is what it was.
Absolutely.
The only reason I asked for the name is because, you know, demons tend to have kind of it's more of a Jewish thing than it is a Christian thing, but there's like lists. I just like to compare. That's neither here nor there. That's not what we're here for today.
Yeah, this guy that I seen, so we were in a revival, and had been going on for like a month. And this lady, she kept coming, and I remember seeing her, you know, as a young teenager, and she would have black spots and black eyes, and I would ask my parents, you know, what's happened to her? And they told me, you know, they were transparent, and they were like, her husband is beating her up because she's coming to church.
It's horrible.
So I still remember that hopeless feeling I had for her. And she was a super nice lady. And she kept coming. And she would look worse. And she kept coming. And so she had told us a couple of nights before that he told her if she kept coming that he was going to kill her, and that he was going to kill the preacher that was telling her to keep coming. And so there was swinging doors inside the church, and then there was like bathrooms, and then there was the outside door. So there was two sets of doors between the sanctuary and the outside. And the minister that was holding the revival, he was in the middle of a message. He was preaching, and all of a sudden he stops, jumps over the banister, the pulpit, the thing, you know, the altar, jumps over that and runs down the aisle. And I'm sitting in the back of the church. I'm a young teenager, you know, I'm sitting in the back. He goes busting through them doors. So, of course, curiosity, you know, and I'm like, so I just take off after him. So he was, me and him was really tight, that preacher, and he really liked me. And I was like, what's going on? So I went after him, and he goes out the other door, just leaves it open. The other doors are swinging doors. And I go out that door, and I see him leap in the air. He was a little small preacher, real small. And this guy, her husband, much of a man, I mean, big man, probably 300 plus pounds, probably your height. I mean, just much of a man, with the 357 Magnum in his hand, pointed at him as he come at him, and he grabbed his hand like this and rode him to the ground. Just put him flat on his back, and he had that hand holding that pistol with that hand and the other one on his forehead and praying. That's what I seen when I opened the door. Him hitting his back with that little preacher. It looked like a little ant on an elephant, you know. But he couldn't get up. And then, more people started coming out. And then eventually that smell of blood and that screaming and that demon. And then he come inside, went in and told the whole congregation that, that God had saved him.
Wow.
Hmm.
I
Wow.
wish I could jump for just this moment
Yes.
into your brain
Yes.
to see that, witness that
Absolutely.
story.
I would
But
much
I do
rather-
not want that to happen.
No.
I would much
You do not
rather
want that
see the
to happen.
memory than to see the realism of that.
Yeah. I'd like to attach your brain to a television
Yes.
and watch it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was he speaking in Latin?
When he was praying for him, he was speaking in tongues.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Interesting. So Spirit Filled Life Conference is coming up.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a sense of I don't know what kind of sense I have, but I have a sense of something amazing happening.
Absolutely.
I already think something amazing is happening. I don't think necessarily that the conference is going to bring that,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the conference is going to complement that,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Sure.
So I'm really excited about that.
Well, there's the point and the reason I told that was that there's a real world out there of things
Yeah.
on God's side and on Satan's side that
Yeah.
most people just want to ignore.
We're so
Yeah.
numb to it.
Yeah.
I mean, look at television. I mean, even things that aren't dark are dark.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're numb to whole.
Yeah.
And I'm not Mr. like don't watch anything. I mean, because I've probably watched a lot of things I wouldn't want to talk about. As far as that goes. But it's just like everything's so dark. Everything's so so attracted to that situation.
Well, so think about what that is. The more that we see, in horror movies, which don't get me wrong, that's my second favorite genre of film. Behind the Western, there's nothing better for me. But by familiarizing ourselves with even this pseudo Hollywood horror,
Yeah.
well, whenever the real stuff comes around, it's like, oh, this is just like a scary movie. This is just what that is. It's not real. The movies aren't real.
It makes it all fun and games.
It does. And it's Satan's biggest ploy, is to convince that these things aren't real. So whenever they're there, you don't pay any attention to it.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, with my knowledge of Wiccanism, as I always thought, which I assumed there was some more serious cult stuff out there, but it was always just, if you take this rock, it's this color, this kind of rock, and you put it in your kitchen, your food's going to taste better, and something's going to align a little bit better.
Now my mom does do a lot of things with stones, and so I did do a research through my Bible with stones, and there's a lot of specific stones in the Bible, and so I was able to help her because there were things in there, and God put things here for healing purposes, and I said I'm not going to rule out everything that she does see, but I said I almost have a standoffish because of what she used it.
I don't mean that in that sense. To me,
Yeah.
it's always just they're putting faith in a rock versus God.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
if I burn this herb, well, then this herb's going to cleanse my house. Well, that's no different than praying in Latin. It's the power of Christ. It's the power of God
Exactly.
that expels demons. It's the power of God that enlightens you or gives you wisdom or gives you that joy. Don't matter what you're burning.
Exactly, and that's what I told her eventually because I was very standoffish because I'm like I don't want to support that, but at the same time I said who am I to say God can't? God can. He
Well,
can do whatever he wants.
There's all different talks about burning incense and censers and stuff. The Catholics still today have their little swinging thing. The angel in Revelation has a flaming censer full of a sweet savor that he casts to the earth. It's not that those things can't be for God. It's just I always thought that it was silly, and that's my ignorance of not being in that life, of not understanding that. You had something you were gonna...
No. I'm thinking the same thing. I'm kind of matching your brainstem today.
We click a lot, bud.
Yeah, because I grew up in a pastor's home, so I liked the horror movies and the scary things because I wouldn't call it sheltered, but I was sheltered from
I definitely was sheltered.
demonology. I listened to
You saw an exorcism. You weren't sheltered.
yeah. I mean,
Different kind of shelter.
I never saw one, but I heard one on an audio. Like that's on. I went to a private school, and one pastor, John Freeman was his name. His wife just passed away, so he's still a pastor. Being prayer for him, but he did a class one time about demonology, and he brought, and let me tell you something. That demon's voice has never left my head.
Yeah.
The way it sounded.
Or the one I heard.
Yeah, it never has left my head. But and I was so captivated by that class.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
When I got older, I got to when I went to Crown, I got to a demonology CD set with Curtis Hudson, by Curtis Hudson, and the things that he said. I mean, just listening to this stuff and how he had these stories and how he talked about demon attacks. I'll have random things come to my head at times, and rather than think, man, I'm sick. He was saying, there was a woman that came up to me that said, I wanted to just run my car off the bridge and kill my family.
Yeah.
And he said that's demons that is trying to get in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And I never looked at it that way before I heard
Sure.
those sermons. I always looked at that as, man, that person's mental. But and I'm not saying that all
Yeah, I have
health
them too.
issues are demon related. Don't get that. I'm just saying that there's a lot more that they do than we accredit them for. Just like there's a lot of things they don't do that we accredit them
Yeah.
for.
And there's a lot of
Yeah.
things that God do that we don't.
That we don't accredit him for. Yeah.
So
Sure.
I've had that feeling of, I bet this Ford Ranger would look real nice wrapped around that tree, and not in like a suicidal way of just I'm driving, let's see what happens kind of mentality.
Yeah.
I've always just referred to it as the call of the void, which it kind of makes sense. It is darkness that's trying to get you to go into that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's just one of those things. I mean, it's nothing. I don't want my kids playing with that stuff. And
Have you still got the CDs and literature and stuff?
I probably could get that CD set for you if you want to hear it. Yeah, it's Curtis Hudson Demonology. They were fantastic because I had a high respect for Curtis Hudson because my dad went to his college, Baptist University of America, I think is what it's called, in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, and so I got that and listened to it. It was very educational.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also where I found out the reason that they didn't like movie theaters, back then.
Sure.
I don't know if you knew that the origination of movie theaters being sinful back in Curtis Hudson's days, because he talked about that's where men used to go and watch porn.
Oh, I did not know that.
I didn't either. I had no idea. But and so movie theaters were across the board. Doesn't matter what was in the movie theater, because that was always the thing. People, when you walk into the movie theater, people don't know what you're going to watch. And it's like when you walk into a movie store, they don't know what you're going to watch. When you go home, they don't know what you're going to watch. So, but I never realized that it was actually, that was the place that you watched that stuff. I had no idea.
That makes me wildly more uncomfortable at the consideration of a movie theater.
Yeah.
Also, every time you've been on this podcast, you've brought up pornography in some form. I've just noticed that.
It goes into demonology.
It does.
It's right there with it.
It's
They're related.
It's
So-
a Jezebel spirit.
Well, I was about to say while we're talking about that. So, again, this is a more predominant thing in Judaism than it is in Christianity, and I don't see why. I think it's more so because we like to just think that Christians today don't like to think about the spiritual warfare. They like to talk about it, but they don't like to think of it as
That's
a
what
real
I'm talking
physical
about,
thing.
yeah.
So, like, there's multiple demons.
If you
right?
could see how many angels and demons were in this room, you'd be terrified.
Absolutely.
Right. Well,
I'd be terrified.
What I'm getting at is how many
Absolutely.
demons are named in our scriptures that we have? How many demonic spirits? Legion,
Abaddon.
Abaddon.
That's the one I heard, just so you know.
Yeah. And
That's the reason
so
I remember that.
there's a
one so
reason I'm
well.
bringing this up, and Lucifer, being because archangel, and then the third of heaven that fell.
Mm-hmm.
Demons aren't people that just got corrupted and turned into this malevolent spirit. It is a malevolent spirit that is an angelic being that fell and got twisted. I don't remember where it talks about it, but Lucifer, his form changed. He's no longer Lucifer. Just like Paul is no longer Saul,
Yes.
Satan is no longer Lucifer. That was his angelic name. But there's a multiplicity of them out there. Beelzebub's another one that's mentioned. We all relate them to the same being. There's multiple out there. They have characteristics, I guess you can say. And Abaddon is a big one.
Tools.
That is mentioned a lot. Yeah. So the reason I asked for if there was a name mentioned in that Ouija board is because there's a good chance that it wasn't a person that burned up in a fire as much as it was a demon that was trying to ease you into this spiritual realm. Could have been Azazel for all we know. But we need to realize that it doesn't matter what the name is, doesn't matter what they're doing. They are a real thing.
Yeah.
They have
Definitely real.
they have an agenda. It's not just, oh, my mind's, I'm just everybody thinks that it's no big deal. No, that's a real thing. And it's trying to get you, the Jezebel spirit. These are real, I can't say physical beings, spiritual beings that are around us all the time.
Yeah.
They're physical. They're just in a different realm.
Yeah.
They're real. They're as physical as us.
I get that, and they can manipulate our realm, but I'm saying, like, we have this vision of Satan as being the goat-footed, horned, trident-carrying red guy.
Yeah.
That's not what they look like.
Right.
Much more terrifying. Yeah. Angels are much more terrifying than that in the fullness of that.
Yeah.
But the good thing is there's at least 2/3 as many angels as there are demonic forces out there. And regardless of that, Christ conquers all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think the more that we get to realize that this stuff is real, there is a real spiritual, not a metaphorical spiritual conflict of your inner evil versus your inner good, no, there are literal spiritual beings out there corrupting the world.
Yeah.
And they have a goal, whether you're lost or saved. Their goal is to stop you, to kill you, because if you're a child of God, they want to make you ineffective.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I was trying to say earlier.
Yeah.
Is the more I want to do good for God, the more I
Yes.
feel attacked. But when I get in that comfort zone, I'm not being attacked because I'm at comfort and I'm doing absolutely zero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the goal, to
That's-
make a child of God ineffective,
And you
or
said-
to make a non-child of God to kill them before they accept Christ.
And he said one thing. He said, every time you're here, you mention pornography. I also mention pride. Every time I'm here, I mention every sin that I have or do struggle with because I have to keep it in front of me at all times.
I hope you didn't take that as like a...
No,
okay.
it's fine. I hope when I'm 80 that I'm mentioning about 50 more sins on top of
You
those.
hear
Yeah.
me mention
You know,
pride
yeah.
constantly.
Pride constantly. But that's
Yeah.
because that's my new demon, that I call, because I'll tell you, man, pride sucks.
Absolutely.
And it's so it is easy. And today's sermon that I preached at church was about, it's not about me.
Uh-huh.
It's about him and me. It said,
What you were talking to me about.
yeah, and it said, God forbid that I should glory, save the cross of Christ. God forbid. God, don't allow myself to receive the glory. And then I asked the question in the middle of the sermon, who do you want people to see in your life? Who do you want people to notice? And man, and I in front of all the church, I said this. I said, and too many times I'd answer that wrong. I want them to see me, my flesh, not God in me, and that's terrifying, because you want to destroy something, take over.
Absolutely.
And right there, I told her last night. She and I were talking. This has been a demon that's been, not a demon maybe, but whatever. I don't know what it is. It's on me, of this spirit of so lack of assurance of, I'm going to screw this up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take over at some point, and I'm going to screw it up.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm a master of screwing up. And that's been my whole life. That's what I told her. And she said, "You're not a screw up." I said, "You don't know me."
You think too much.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It sounds like a problem, doesn't it,
Mhm.
Phil?
Think too much.
We don't
He
struggle
thinks
with that.
too
do we?
much and he moves too fast.
Yeah.
The reason I know that.
Yeah. Phil and I, that's our spirit animals.
Mhm.
Thinking too much. So I mean, I don't know.
What you guys were
fine.
talking about earlier, I looked it up, that 1 Timothy verse 1 and 2 says, "Now the Spirit speaketh expressly, that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, speaking lies in hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with a hot iron." So that's why we see people that, there's so much that if you went 200 years back in time and brought them, one of those people here today, they would be like, can you not see all this, that's
Terrible
going on?
sin.
But it's because all of us have our conscience seared,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And that's terrifying. You look about us, but Look at church people. Church people. I'm not talking about Christians. I'm talking about church people. People that they're a couple and dunners. You know, they come for a reason, and then you don't see them again. You know, they get this, you know, hallelujah second, and then they're gone. And it's like, well, I'd be at church, but you know, but softball or whatever. You know, you fill in the blank. Sports is a real big to me.
Sports are dumb.
Yeah, and so
That's what my mug will say.
Oh my.
so I mean, you know, and I'm not Christ. I don't say saved and not saved. I wish I had that
No, you
magic
don't.
glasses.
No, you don't.
I said okay.
You'd be sad.
Yeah, but it had helped me know who to focus on. In my head, I know that's not a right thing. I'm saying in my head, it'd give me some clarity.
I get what you're saying.
But you know, it's like there's people that come to church for a small season, and it's almost like they're there for something particular, not Christ, to get someone off their back or to get an answered prayer or whatever the case is, to get a job.
Absolutely.
And then they get that, and it's they're non-existent until the next problem comes.
Quid pro quo.
Then they
with
come,
God.
and I'll tell you that is the most dangerous place
Absolutely.
to be, because those
Terrifies
people
me.
think they have it.
Yep.
They got, and I'm not a person that says you're not saved. Not normally. That's happened. That has happened before. But I'm not normally the type of person to walk up to someone, you're not saved, and you know you need Christ. But
He said it to me.
that's why I had to.
That's a good thing he said it
He
to
did.
you.
It was a good thing. It was a good thing.
I've seen it happen.
Yeah, and he watched it happen too, and like that's not normal for me. It's not that is not an everyday thing. I don't really think I'd go up to people and just say you're not saved. I don't.
The best
have
thing
that.
to do is to follow the Spirit.
Yeah. And when I do that, it works out.
Well, it's not the best thing to do. It's the
the
only
only
way
thing to
to do it.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's a terrifying thing. I said that today. I was like, stop, you know, they're playing with fire. Literally playing with
Absolutely.
fire. Literally.
Yeah,
It's not a
eternal.
figurative term.
No.
They are playing with hellfire, and that's the only fire that you definitely don't want to play with. You can play with any other fire because that pain will go away, but that hellfire will never go away, and that's terrifying to me. That people sit in my church, and I say that I say, God forbid that anybody has ever heard me give the gospel and go to hell. God forbid, and that's why. And that we talked about this. That's why it's always important to beeline to the cross. That's why it's always important. I never want to get behind the pulpit without mentioning how Christ can save a soul, how the Holy Spirit can draw a person to Him. I never want to forget Christ, because the day I do, you know, is the day that I pat somebody's back into hell and
Yeah.
say, oh, all Christians out there, you're struggling with depression or whatever the case is. Whenever there's someone out there struggling with sin, and hell is at their back. I think Pastor Sexton preached a sermon years ago called "Kissing the Door of Heaven but Never Getting In." You know, I'm telling you, there's too many church people that are kissing Christ in the face every Sunday, and they're going to go straight to hell.
Absolutely.
That's terrifying.
It is.
Terrifying.
I like how he says, "God forbid," and people don't gasp.
But when you say,
By God.
by God,
And so the reason I bring that up is because that's one thing I've been noticing. We've taken it, especially here in the South, to be akin to a swear, or you're cussing whenever you say "by God," or God.
Well, even when I heard Jesus Christ for the first time, like
Yes.
that was just slang. I had no idea it was a real person that they were talking about.
Yeah.
But it was just something we said.
It's the best name you can say. And so, when I say "by God," because I say behind the pulpit all the time, and I say it with my accent because I have one. I say "by God," and I don't mean like, well, by God. I mean by the power of God.
Yeah.
And when you say "God forbid," it's not, well, God forbid. It's no, literally, God forbid this from happening.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the mentality we need to have. So one question I want to leave us with. End of the book's been written. We can agree.
Yes.
We kind of see what's going down there. We know that the enemy has more knowledge of this than we do.
Yes.
absolutely.
In his continual attack of us, what is his end goal? What do you think is the reason he continues to try and dissuade and to attack and to kill and to harm people?
There was a movie that I watched, and I'm not going to say what movie it is because I don't want anyone to watch it or whatever. But the character said, but in the Bible you lose. And the devil responded, look who wrote the book. You know, I don't know that the devil doesn't know he can win. I don't, he may, but I don't know that he does. But if he knows he's going to lose, misery loves company. I'm going to drag as many people down with me as I can. You know, Curtis Hudson actually had the view, and if you ever hear the demonology, you'll hear this. He believes that Satan was the ruler of the earth before Adam. Mm-hmm. He believes that. I don't know if it's true or not. I'm not going to argue with anybody. You know, it was a really neat thought process. He said Satan was the ruler of Adam, or Satan was the ruler of the earth, and whenever Satan fell, God stripped the rule from Satan and gave it to man, and Satan has been after it ever since. Mm-hmm. And so when Satan attacked man, you know, he wanted the rule back, and he got it. And so I don't know the accuracy of that, because I don't think there's any biblical evidence, but it's a really neat thought process.
There's some apocryphal evidence, but there's not necessarily canon biblical evidence. That's nothing here.
And it doesn't. Really, the thought doesn't matter, because everyone's allowed to have their thoughts as long as it's not anti-biblical. It doesn't matter. But I don't know that Satan knows that he's going to lose. I think he knows what the Bible says.
Sure.
But I think he's fighting it kind of like we fight. Reality.
If he believed God and what God said, then he would have never failed. Yeah. So he knows definitely what actually happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. More than what we have. He knows he lives it. He lived in heaven with God in all of his glory. So he knows that, but he just doesn't believe him, because you know that he doesn't believe God, because if he believed him, he would still be there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And all of that was attacking her as a child.
Absolutely.
But it started with her family, her parents,
absolutely,
her grandparents.
Conglomerates.
It's passed down generation to generation, and now, and what Chelsea doesn't understand, well, maybe he understands, but she has the first generation of her family being Christian.
Yes,
first generation. I don't have that in my mentality. My dad was the first generation, but you know, she has the first generation of a long history of
breaking the chain.
Yeah, and what God can do with that is amazing.
Yeah,
and so you know, I don't know. Satan can go to hell.
Yes, we almost put that on a coffee cup
tagline
yesterday.
Yeah, that would be the next one.
And you can't be upset, because that is biblical.
That's what it's made for.
He's going to hell.
Yeah,
and he can go sooner rather than
whether
later.
he knows it or not.
Yeah.
So I ask you that because I've had some thoughts, I think, from time to time. So
don't think too much.
Good habit.
So I believe that he had to believe he was victorious when the crucifixion happened.
Absolutely.
Because he wouldn't have gone through with it if he knew what that actually had for us.
He didn't believe it.
He didn't believe it. So if he had a knowledge that through his death on the cross, the world would gain salvation, he would have kept him alive for a millennia. Well, he would have done everything in his...
to keep him from dying.
Yeah. And the thing that I think that you and I, and even I didn't think about this until just now, Satan lives in the same timeline we do. He doesn't live outside of time like God.
Yeah.
Right. So today is today for him.
He's a created creature.
Yeah, and tomorrow is tomorrow for him. It's not. It's not. He's not living outside and looking over.
Yeah,
like God.
We do often, I think, associate him to be more powerful in the God realm. He is more powerful than us, but he's less powerful than God. I think we get that confused.
He is eternal.
But so here's the thing. He can't.
We are too.
He can't hurt God. He can't harm God. God is untouchable.
Yes.
Sure, you can kill him in the flesh, but what's that really do to him?
And we're untouchable.
He laid his life down.
What I was going to say is the only way he can harm God is by harming his children who are still vulnerable to him.
Same thing. What do people do? I mean, we've watched, you know, it's not only in movies, but you see
it's everything.
Like
it's
some big kingpin, he may go to prison, but what's he do? He starts attacking the people that put him there as family.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just his way.
So to me, it feels like whether he knows he's going to win or believes whatever, he's getting as much damage in to God's heart by attacking his children as he can.
It says we are his joy.
Well, Chelsea made a statement and I'm going to let her make it, about Daniel and the lion's den that you said about.
I was recently doing Daniel with the kids in Sunday school and stuff, and I was reading where. Sorry.
No, I was trying to swallow away from the microphone.
I'm laughing at him, not you.
Well, okay, so when they put Daniel in the lion's den, remember the guys came after him. They were trying to find fault in him, picking him apart,
Oh yeah.
and trying to get him. And then in the end, though, it wasn't just them that got thrown in; their families went with them. So when we sin, it just proves that my sin affects
Absolutely.
my family, or it affects the people around me.
Sure.
And so that's why I was telling him, as the leader of their homes, the wives and their children followed. I was actually talking about his addiction and how it hurt our family, even though he didn't think it did. Our whole family got pulled into that fire with him.
Sure.
So
Sin is very much a grenade. It's not just a shot to you, but it's got this, and it's not going to affect, necessarily your cousins as much as it's going to affect your wife, as much as it's going to affect you. But there is that ripple effect going out. Yeah.
Yeah, it don't hurt nobody. You heard that all the time.
Yeah.
It don't hurt nobody.
I ain't hurting nobody.
Yeah, I ain't hurting nobody.
I'll drink if I want to. I ain't hurting
I ain't
nobody.
hurting nobody.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is we've had this discussion many times. Drinking, you can justify it every way, left and right.
Any sin.
Yeah, any sin. I'm just picking on drinking because he's
Because
tired
that's
of me talking about mine, so I'm gonna talk about his now.
Yeah. Let's pick a new subject.
Let's pick another one.
Wow.
But any sin really affects everything, and then
It
it's like,
does.
how much of that sin are you okay with? How much? And it's like, well, it's not a sin if you do this much. It's like, well, when does it become a sin, and how far do you want to push that envelope?
What's that threshold?
And why are you playing with fire?
You have to define sin.
It reminds me of a story about about a guy that hired three drivers and said, I want all three of you to test run. I said, what I need you to do is I need you to go and drive the car towards the edge of the cliff, and I need you to stop before you get to the end. And so they took it as a challenge. The first driver went all the way, and he skidded, and he was a foot away from the edge, and he was so proud of himself, brushed himself off. Second driver got in the car, drove, and he skidded and slid just about 1.5 inches away from the edge. And then the third driver went up. He drove real slow, pulled up about 10 feet away, and stopped the car. And the guy said, "You're hired." And they said, "What?" He said, "If I'm gonna let you drive my family, I want to make sure that you're, why do we get so close to the edge? Why do we get so close to that edge of sin? It may not be sin yet, but we're getting daggone close. Why would we?" And I do the same thing. I'm guilty.
Yeah. Well, we like sin. We like to get as much sin as we can, and still feel all right about that. So whenever you're telling the pool table story, and he said, "What do you do?" And you said, "I do what I always do." That's almost the exact conversation that Savannah
That's when
had.
I looked over at you.
The very first time she ever came over to my parents' house that I was living at the time, because again I had liquor bottle upon liquor bottle, and she's like, "So what do you do? Just spend all night crying and drinking?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's exactly what I do. That's the life."
That was exactly what I did.
Helps you sleep.
I was depressed.
Yes.
Absolutely depressed and alone. And
As you also said, your friends didn't know anything about it. Aside from the friends that I've told, I don't think that anyone ever knew that I know my family certainly didn't know that I was having any struggles.
I remember I just assumed everybody could see right into me, and they knew what was going on. But like I said, the more people I've talked to, they're like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
So speaking of friends, bravo to your friend that, when you came back, he tried to help you before you left. You went to church, you came back. She got her family involved with you and to give you the baby shower and all that.
I was very thankful, and that's something that my heart is definitely for, reaching out to girls where a lot of times when teenagers end up pregnant, they get shunned.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to me, no, it's not ideal, but now you are. Let's make it right.
Right.
Get your life right.
Yes.
Yeah.
All things work together for good to them that love God.
Yeah. I mean, that's fighting the good fight. That's continuing on in the face of adversity, of continuing to know that this is a soul for God. Doesn't matter what they say, there's still a soul that has the potential to be for God.
Exactly.
If God allows it, next time I come on, I'll give my testimony.
Yeah.
If God allows it. If He doesn't, then I won't.
Yeah.
One day.
I never want to say I'm going to give my testimony next time because I don't like that.
Speaking of that, last Saturday I held back.
Did you?
Yes.
Well, good.
Good.
I
Good.
guess.
No, I didn't. I should have. I should have said more last Saturday. But, and she has encouraged me because that was just there at the fire with a few men, that we hang out.
Oh,
at the
that's
coffee
what
shop.
Oh, I was like, what are you
This
talking
is
about? I
last
was
Saturday.
with you.
Yeah, last Saturday was yesterday. I was thinking, okay,
Last-
I was sitting there
last-
thinking, I don't know what you did yesterday. But
Last
good for you.
Saturday bonfire.
Last Saturday, I felt like it was the me show, and I was getting super self-conscious. I felt like I was going too much, too in-depth, and too much.
You and Nate both said the same thing, and I told Nate, I said, "That's just your head, and that's just your head," because it's easy to feel that way. Because I talk a lot, at the bonfire too, and really, I'm not trying to talk. I'm trying to talk to get other people to talk.
Yeah.
And yes, you did hold back. Like now that you mention it, you were very quiet that night. Get rid of that sin, dude.
Yeah.
It's pride.
Yeah, it is. It's pride.
It's same with
Yeah.
me, man. I get it. We want to give so much, but then we want to okay. You roll it back in. I get it.
I
100%.
think part of the reason I hold back on my testimony a lot too is I want people to see who I am now.
Absolutely.
And then when I share who I was, they're like, no way. And I feel like you have more of an effect of what God has done because they know me for who I am now. And other people are quick to judge. If I just meet you on the street and say, hey, I did this.
I can say the effect you desired was achieved today.
So,
The effect God desires.
yes.
Yeah, and I don't ask her to give her testimony anymore. I don't push it.
Sure.
I don't ask anybody to give their testimony anymore. Usually, unless God says ask them. I try not to because I used to try to push her, and that's just not the right way to do it.
Right.
It's just not for
But
her.
in a way, his pushing has helped me get out.
Sure.
He pushes me out of my comfort zone a lot. And I'm thankful for that because I need somebody to
Well, you've pushed me out of
continuously
mine.
kick me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even as chatty as I am, I still have there's still
You still have a shut off.
there's still things that I
Well,
don't want to talk about.
Just like I was just saying, there's that mentality of I feel like I talk about it too much and overshare way too much on a lot of things. And,
I meant to talk to you about that. No,
yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Well, so like I said, that was the whole thing. I felt like I was bogarting the whole fire circle, but I kept
You
getting
weren't.
this compulsion, like, hey, we have to talk about this kind of thing.
Joe felt the same way, and then evidently Nate felt the same way. It's just
Yeah, and the first time I felt that way, I didn't tell anybody because I was just like, get over it,
Yeah.
But I'm glad that other people thought that. I think God let you guys think that to help me realize,
And next thing might be Steven's turn to go and talk the whole time.
it's always Steven's turn. I love Steven.
Yeah.
Hey, let me tell you, he's probably watching right now.
Probably.
His testimony is an absolute blessing to me.
Yeah.
And he'll never know, because that's just, I don't know. He is a blessing. Watching that transformation like
Absolutely.
that was amazing.
yes.
It was literally, it was like I was standing in a dark room and a light went on. It was, and Phil was there.
Yes.
Phil got to witness this, and that was amazing. I'm glad you were there
Yes.
because there's something about that sharing that experience that's just it's something. It's amazing. And
There's a little Peter and Paul moment there.
it was. And since you were the I don't know which one's which. So
I was about to say who was talking about circumcision. Yes. That's the defining line.
I'm gonna give you Peter.
I was gonna say if you're not going to, I'm gonna take
Oh,
it.
okay. So I made this statement today. If you listen to the sermon today, I never thought about this before, but but God forbid that I should glory. The Apostle Paul was fighting against what we do every day here. We talk about who's your favorite person in the Bible. And how many people would say, oh, of course they'd say with Jesus by their self-righteous mind, and then they'd say Paul. And he was like, that was the very thing he was talking about in Galatians 6. He's saying, God forbid that I should glory, save the power of Christ. And yet we do it to him. It's like Paul's up there going like this every time somebody says his name.
He's like, I said not to.
I said, don't do this. Don't do this. It's like, did they not read anything I wrote?
Well, clearly we didn't read anything we wrote. Look at where the church is at now compared to.
Just talked about that in Sunday school.
Yeah.
I said, just because he wrote it down, you don't get to see that, he wrote that to all these churches, to all these groups of churches, all these groups of assemblies that he wrote these to. And we know by today that they didn't listen, right? And the whole scripture is for us, for correction, but we don't listen.
Yeah.
And that's not to give you a free ticket to sin. I'm just saying that we haven't changed.
Yeah.
Heavens no, he said.
Heavens no.
Absolutely.
We have gone a little bit longer than usual. I didn't realize when we have our backs to the clock, we don't see things.
We've gone full circle.
We have. Listen,
With the clock hand.
this is a full circle kind of podcast. Even you talking about teenage pregnancy, that was like episode 3.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah. We covered a woman that had gotten pregnant at 15 and was ostracized from her church. And it's like, so because of a sin, you're going to remove this person from your group where they need to be the most.
See, I'm struggling with Christians right now that are. There's a group
I'm
of
struggling
people
with
I'm
Christians
around
right now.
that's exactly how they're handling every situation, and it's killing me
Well, so
inside.
here's the thing: you're struggling with Christians.
I'm struggling
We're
with
not
people.
called to be Christians.
I'm
We're
struggling
called to
with
be
people.
disciples.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
called to be followers.
Followers.
Christian's a horrible thing to be because we can't attain that. And so when you,
You're awesome.
Christ would never call you that.
well, yeah,
Period. He would never call you awesome, he said. But I call you awesome.
Christ would
Just-
never
I'm
call
just
you
playing.
Christian.
I'm just playing.
3 conversations going on right here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of ground covered. Again, thank you
Yes, absolutely.
for sharing that, for being so vulnerable a second time.
Sadly enough, there's still more in there that didn't come out. So.
Sure.
It'll come out.
When the Lord permits,
When they have you back.
you're welcome. You
Yep.
are absolutely welcome to give us whatever, whenever. And so, we do ask people for their testimonies, but it's always whatever the Spirit has laid on you to tell.
That's what we mean by that. We probably need to
We need to
word
clarify
that a little different.
Yeah, because some people
wordsmith that a little bit.
don't want to go that deep. Some people want to go miles deeper into what they've got. And again, if the Spirit tells you to go deep,
Yeah.
go deep.
I
If the
want
Spirit
people to
tells
do
you to
what the
give a
Spirit
cursory, go cursory. It's what it is.
Absolutely.
But we appreciate that. One day we'll have you on here and we'll not have you bare your soul to us. But we thank you for doing that in the meantime. Have you got anything closing? Anything?
I'm good to go.
All right. Well, folks, we appreciate you joining us. We don't apologize for going longer. Just listen longer. But we do thank you for being a part of this. We thank you for reaching out to us, giving input, feedback, any requests that you've gotten. We've seen a few different prayer requests and things that have come through the boards there.
Yes.
We love hearing the Facebook messages, comments on the videos. We read every one of them. We try and respond when we can, when it's applicable. You can also email us at blessingandcursing3019gmail.com. But again, the easiest way is definitely just Facebook Messenger. We also have a YouTube channel now that I keep forgetting about, and it is the Blessing and Cursing Podcast. If you just do Blessing and Cursing, it does not pop up.
Right.
So I did find that out.
Can you tag the Spirit Filled Life Conference?
I can do my best.
Do your best. Or I'll do it.
Yeah, but I say you can hop on board and add whatever you want to on there.
Spirit Filled Life Conference, John Van Gelderen, Pat Tanner, is going to be April the 11th to the 15th, 11th to the 14th. If you can't come, I want you to pray about it. I want you to pray for it, no matter where you're at across the world. 11th to the 14th, 8 a.m. at Grace Community Church for men's prayer breakfast. 11 a.m. Vision Independent Baptist Church for the 11 a.m. service. 4:30 p.m. that night will actually be on podcast with John Van Gelder and myself and Pat Tanner.
Mm-hmm.
And then that evening, the service will be here at Sugar Grove Baptist Church at 6 p.m. And then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at Vision Independent Baptist Church at 6:30 p.m. Please, please, please try to make it. Pray for it. Whatever you can do. If you have any questions, you can ask Austin, Phil, or you can call me as well, 865-661-5285. I give my number out. It is what it is.
I'll say you get a lot of phone calls anyway.
As long as you're the one that's giving it out.
And Austin's number is...
I will change my number. Not that I don't want to hear from you. I just don't want to hear from that many of you right now. No, I'm just kidding. So there's one takeaway that I've gathered from this is that there is nobody that is incapable of being used by God under any circumstances. It does not matter where you've been, what you've done, what you've thought, what you've heard, what you've partaken in or not partaken in. You are valuable to God because God gives you your value. And you're never too far gone to be saved.
That's right.
He can always pull you back from that. So be in prayers for the people around you that may be going through that hidden depression, that hidden demonic influence. Really, look out for people wearing masks, because I think we've all been there a time or two. And again, the spirit realm is a real thing. It's not something that we like to talk about in the metaphorical sense. It is a real, practical. There's entities out there, but our God is mightier than all. So we have that hope. Thank you. I know we've been very long-winded. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.